Welcome to our Tropilunch. And today it's great pleasure to introduce you guys Meiga. So Meiga is a Brazilian biologist with a master's degree in biodiversity and conservation from São Carlos Federal University in Brazil. She's a PhD candidate in interdisciplinary ecology from the School of Natural Resources and Environments, provisioned by Dr. Dennis Valley. Anna is also part of the Tropical Conservation and Development Program, and her PhD research is a collaborative work developed in partnership with the NGO Wild Animal Conservation Institute, ECAS. Anna's research investigates the intricate relationships between animal movement patterns, wildlife behavior, and conservation efforts in a changing world. So, for further ado, another floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Nikki, for the introduction, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I'm really excited to talk to you all, and thank you so much, everyone who is on Zoom as well. It's a great pleasure to talk to you about my PhD research. And before I start, as Henrique was mentioning, I just would like to acknowledge that this is a collaborative work. It's a partnership with ECAS, which is an NGO in Brazil who works with giant anteaters and giant armadillos. So let's get started. And I have a huge team behind everything that I will be talking here today. And just to bring a little bit of context how this presentation will go today, I will be talking a little bit about all of my chapters, so it's going to be a lot of talk, but I will bring a little background to set the stage, and then I will start going a little deeper in one of each chapters. So to start, land use land cover change is a process that is already well known about converting land uses to other landscapes. And this process is already well known by its impacts because it has impacts due to habitat loss, biodiversity loss, and also microclimate change. And all of this process, it can influence the species behavior. And when I'm talking about species behavior, one of the examples is the animal movement. So if we change a landscape, animal can move, for example, to go to another areas, to avoid some areas of the human influence and choose other areas to go. And animal movement is a very important behavior because all animals need to move, right? They all need to move to find food, they need to move to find shelter, and they also need to move to find mates and to raise their young. Movement behavior is an important behavior and it can influence the fitness and survival of animals. So this is a very important behavior. And there is another type of behavior that is also well known, that is the time of activity. And there are some studies that show, for example, here I studied with giant anteaters, a very nice paper that shows that the time of activity of giant anteaters change depending on the temperature. So, for example, we can see that during warmer temperature, giant anteaters will rest more in forested areas and they will be more active at night. However, if it's colder temperatures, these animals, they will be more active during the day and will rest more at night. So this is another example of behavioral change in animal species. And okay, but why giant anteaters, right? Other than they being these incredible species with this very different looking, there are more to that. This is a vulnerable species under the IUCN Red List. And also, we believe that giant anteaters can be a good model to understand the behavior of other species because they show these very strong responses to environmental changes. So they have a physiological limited capacity to thermoregulate because of several factors, such as they are very large mammal, they have this low metabolic rate, and they eat specialized in ants and termites. So a lot of factors influence there to be a low physiological capacity thermoregulate animal. And then we expect that these changes will influence their behavior, and it could be a model of how other species would also be changing in the future. Okay, so that was a brief background about what I will be talking for most of the chapters here. And now I will start digging in each one of the chapters. And this, my chapter 1, I will be talking about native and anthropogenic land uses. And the title is Giant Anteaters on the Move, Native Habitat Selection and Behavioral Responses to Land Use Change. And just to acknowledge again, I have a huge team behind everything here that I will be talking. And okay, so just to start and bring a little bit of context of this work, we are working in the Brazilian Savanna, also known as the Cerrado, which is the largest, the second largest biome in Brazil, behind only to the Amazon. And here is an example of the biome of the Cerrado in this light yellow color, just to bring a sense of the size of the Cerrado. We have the Brazil here, and the Cerrado, it's a huge area, and it's considered the largest savanna in the world. And it has, it is a biodiverse hotspot. It has a high number of endemic species, especially plants. However, more than 0.5% of the Cerrado has been converted to other land uses. And just to bring some numbers, here we can see throughout the years that the native vegetation is decreasing in the Cerrado, and pasture and agriculture are increasing. Okay, so based on that, one of the questions that we have is to understand how land use and land cover change is influencing giant anteaters movement behavior. And with that, we would expect that they are selecting, like they are preferring native habitats compared to anthropogenic ones, and also that they will be resting more in native habitats. And resting behavior here is important for giant anteaters because of what I was explaining of their limited capacity to thermoregulate. So when they are resting is when they are saving energy. So it's a very important behavior for these animals. And here just a cute image to show the GPS device. This is the harness that we use in these, the giant anteaters. And we are using GPS telemetry data. And again, just to bring more context for our study areas, here we have the Cerrado in Mato Grosso do Sul state, and we have 3 study sites. But what I wanted to call attention here is that we can notice the 3 different plots, right? Like the maps of the areas. And most of we can see here is yellow, right? We can see a lot of yellow here. That is basically pastures and a mosaic of uses. And we can see also a little bit of dark forest, dark green, that is the forest. We have eucalyptus plantation and savanna. And these polygons are just representing the home range areas of the animals. So just you can have an idea of where they are on the map. But really, what calls our attention is how many yellow we can see in these maps. And we are using GPS telemetry data for 41 individuals, which is a lot of telemetry data for a mammal. And this data was collected in 2017 and 2018. And just to illustrate how we approach these animals, it is actually very easy to trap a giant anteater. We basically go on top of the truck, driving very slow, and then we find an animal. We just need to be careful with the wings because they have a very good sense of smell, so they can smell you very easily, but they don't see very well. So if you know the direction of the wings, you just know how to approach them. You use this huge net and you just trap them. And then you use the anesthetics for them to sleep. We bring them to a protected area under the shade of the tree and do all the measurements for the species, add the harness or change the harness if we need. So just to illustrate how easy it is compared to other mammals or other species, other animals in general. All right, so in terms of analysis, I'm not gonna go super deep on the analysis, but I just wanted to mention that we are using these behavioral states that basically we are using the step length of the animals, like how fast this animal is moving, and how tortuous this animal is moving, basically. What is the angulation of their movements? So we are using this information to infer the behavioral states, if they are resting, if they are active. So basically, this is one of the approaches that we are using. And also the habitat selection. That basically we have several options of where the animal could have gone and the actual place that they went. So with this, we can say where they were selecting, what was the habitat that they were selecting. And so what, right? But why do we want to know if it's fast, if it's turtles movement? This actually can bring, imagine that this is a giant anteater path, and it's moving a lot around here very slowly. This can be an indication that this animal is sleeping or is using this area a lot. So this is an important place for this animal. If this is a path that the animal is like in a straight, very fast movement, it can be an indication that they are running, they're in a fast movement. And this can also be an indicative that a place that is perceived as risky, for example. So this movement information can tell us a lot about the behavior and what's happening for these animals. And in terms of the habitat selection, we have here, for example, the different landscapes in the area, and we will see, like, we can see if the animal is selecting an area or avoiding this area. So that information about where they are selecting compared to all the option places tell us where they are actually going or where do they prefer to be. All right, so in terms of some results for this chapter, here it's a similar idea of the previous plot where we have the number of individuals. So the numbers in front of each bar is representing the number of giant anteater individuals. We have male and females. And here is all the other landscapes that we are looking for. So there is forest, savanna, wetland in the right side of the plot, right? And in the left side, it's always pasture. So we are always comparing where these animals are going compared to pasture. And you can see that everybody is to the right, right? All the bars are coming to the right. It means that all of them are avoiding pasture. They're selecting all the other options except pasture. And this is the same, a similar pattern for males and females. And here, what I want to bring attention for this plot, what I will be talking here, we have time of day and the proportion of resting behavior in the y-axis. And here we have these more shaded areas as the night period, and the light yellow on the back is during the day. And here I just wanted to first bring focus to pastures and mosaic of uses that are two very similar land uses. And we can notice, maybe I can use this to help. Let's see if I can point. Here in this area, we can see that there is a low proportion of resting behavior in pastures and mosaic of uses. And when we start to bring other type of land uses, we can see, for example, in the forest, they are resting more, right, compared to the other areas. And another thing that is very interesting here that I would like to highlight is this difference between the proportion of resting in native forest and in eucalyptus, that is the forest plantations in the area. So we can see that they are using these two areas in a very different way. And here, just to complete, these are, now I added the savanna and wetland, just to show again that for all these native land uses, we have a higher proportion of resting behavior and a lower proportion in the anthropogenic uses. And of course, as we see that at some point they are going to be resting in all of these land uses because it's the biology of the animal. They do need to be resting at some point. But this beginning of the plot that shows us very interesting different patterns. Okay, and why is this important, right? What are some of the conservation implications of these results? We can notice that giant anteaters, they can persist in this human-modified landscape. We saw on the maps that there is a lot of pastures in the areas, and we can see that they are there, but they have these behavioral mental adjustments. So they are selecting specific land uses, mostly native uses, and they are resting in a very different way as well. So they need to have these behavioral adjustments in these different places. And this information is very important because it brings us target information of where they are using, what they are using, and why they are using. And this can help us to plan effective conservation plans for the species. And in terms of future research related to this talk, this chapter, it would be very important to understand better how these behaviors and how this movement is changing in specific places, for example, crop plantations, such as eucalyptus or soybean plantation. And it would also be interesting to understand how these animals would change their preferences in critical periods of the females. Because I showed here that the females and males, they don't change. They are all selecting in a similar way. But I was looking for the females for the whole time. I wasn't looking for specific times, for example, when the females have a pup or when they are pregnant. And this might have some different information to us. So this is some future research that could be interesting to dig more. Okay, so everybody with me still, second chapter. The second chapter, I will be focusing more in agriculture intensification. And the title of this chapter is Beyond Deforestation, the Impact of Agriculture Intensification on Wildlife Movements. And again, just to highlight that I have a huge group with me. And okay, still in similar topic, right? We were talking a lot about deforestation, and I will continue to say that we know that deforestation is already well known and there is a lot of impact for wildlife. However, there is another type of land use that is given less attention, that is called the agriculture intensification, that is basically using an already anthropogenic use to another anthropogenic use. For example, pastures to soil. And here, just to give an example, in these top images, we can see it's a pasture in the Cerrado area, and we see a lot of isolated trees in the middle of these pastures. And when we convert this to soybean, for example, there is we can see a lot of change. All these trees are removed. We see there is a treatment on the soil, and the landscape changes a lot. And this is especially important in biomes such as the Cerrado, the savannas, and grasslands, because it's given less attention. Normally, we think about the forest, Amazon, which is also important, but these biomes is given even less attention. So this is a very important topic to do research. And in the movement ecology topic, there is a call to increase this experimental analysis, to do experimental analysis with movement data, which is very rare. Most of the time we are just observing, it's only observational data because we have the GPS data and what's happening is what's happening, but there's not a lot of experiments. So for this chapter, we are using an approach that brings a little bit different and kind of experiment, that is the before-after control impact approach. And just to explain, we have data in two different areas that we are treating as control and impact, and we have data for the before period. So nothing changed, we have a pasture there the way it is, and then we have the after impact, where in the control area, we continue to have a pasture the same way, there's no change. And in the impact area, this pasture is now converted to soybean plantation. And just to make sure that I explain that we are analyzing the same individuals in both periods. So we have GPS data for same individuals in both areas. So based on that, some important questions that we are asking is how converting these pastures for cattle ranching is impacting giant anteater movement patterns. And we would expect that they avoid these soybean areas because there are less resources for these animals there. And the other question that we have, we believe that these trees in the middle of the pastures, they are important for giant anteaters, especially because they have this limited capacity to thermoregulate. So are they using these trees during the pastures? Are these areas important? So we wanted to see if when we are converting the pastures to soy, removing all of these trees, if there is an impact and if the trees are actually important for these animals. So here, just to bring an idea of the areas that we have, we can see in the blue area is the control, and the red square is representing the impact area. These dots in the middle are representing the GPS telemetry points. And here we are using 14 animals, 7 animals in the control area, 7 animals in the impact. And here is where we have the soybean plantation. It used to be a pasture, and now it is a soybean plantation. And just to show that it is exactly where the animals used to be. Okay, so for this chapter, we are calculating the home range of these animals and seeing how they are overlapping. And also the net square displacement. That basically is how far the animal goes since the first point. So how far they move away from the initial points that we started to monitor this animal. And the other analysis that we are doing is this revisitation analysis that basically tell us how many times the animal is coming back to the same place and how long it's staying there in the same area. And again, so what, right? What does it tell us? In terms of home range analysis, there is this one of the definitions that is being used for a long time that basically tells that the home range is an area where the animal does its regular activities. So searching for food, mates, this is where the area where they normally use is considered as home range. There's another definition that says that is the place that the animals use to survive and reproduce. And is also this area that has some value for the animal. So this is basically what we are seeing in these home range areas. And here just an illustration. We have several points, locations of the animal, and then we can calculate where is the overall home range of the animals. In the net square displacement, as I was saying, it tells us how far the animal is moving, how far away from the same area. So in this example, let's say the animal was in one place, and we can see that it dispersed to another area. It's very far from where it started. So it also tells how much how far the animal is moving and if it's dispersed into other areas. So it also brings us relevant information for these species. And the revisitation analysis tells us if the animal is going back to the same place several times. It tells us that it's considered as a rich place for these animals. There is something in that area that is important for that animal. All right, so some results for this. Here we have, in the x-axis, we have the period. So we have before soy, immediate after soy, and long-term after soy. And this is the overlap, like how many overlaps there is between the same individual in the same home range areas. So if the animal is staying in the same home range or not. And we have the control area and the impact area. And here what is showing, it's very clear. The animals in the control, they are basically staying in the same place. They like their areas and they are overlapping, they are staying in the same areas. In the impact, they are moving a lot to other areas. And just as an illustration, this is Fernanda is in the control area, and we can see all the colors, they are overlapping, so the home range is in the same area. And Mowgli, that is the other individual in the impact area, we can notice that he moved it completely away from the soybean plantation, that is the red polygons. And here another illustration, we have the time, we have month and year, and the net square displacement, again, is how far the animal is moving from the initial point. And we have the square representing the control, and the black dots representing the impact area. And here is the mean for each one of the areas, like for all the animals in each one of the areas. And we can notice that the black dots, they are moving far away from the areas where they are. So it means that they are dispersing to other areas. Again, showing that after the soybean, they are dispersing to far away from the soil. And here is the revisitation, one of the revisitation results. We could see there is a significant revisitation to isolated trees. So we could see that along all of the year, basically, they are revisiting more areas with trees compared to areas that there is no trees. And here, just to show, is the time that they spend, like the resident time is how long they spend in an area. And we can see that they are spending much more time when they're close to the trees. And as they get far away from the trees, they tend to spend less time. And here, I just wanted to show an example when I'm talking about these isolated trees and the pastures. I really wanted to show what it means in an area that was not converted to soy, just to bring an idea how many isolated trees we have in an area that was not converted to soil. So we can see there's a lot of trees. And then for the conservation implications of this chapter, we can see that agriculture intensification, it can impact wildlife. It's making these animals shift the areas to other areas. And this information is important to look beyond the deforestation, right? We tend to focus a lot on deforestation, which is huge and super important. But we can see here that agriculture intensification is also important, and it seems to have a super impact for this wildlife. And this is particularly relevant to the Brazilian savanna, which is a savanna. So there is a lot of increase of soy plantation now in the Cerrado. And also there is this soy moratorium that is an agreement that you cannot deforestate new areas, so you cannot clear new areas, but you can use areas that are already cleared. For example, in the Cerrado. So you cannot deforestate the Amazon, but you can use pastures in the Cerrado. And this is huge, right? We are seeing that it's not that simple. It has also an impact for the species. And in terms of future research, there's a lot more that we could explore. One thing that would be super important is to evaluate these animals' survival and fitness in these areas. Are they surviving in these areas, even when they are changing to the soil or not? What will happen with the young that are born in these areas? Will they also disperse to other areas? Are the social interaction between these animals going to change? And another thing that would be very interesting to understand if it's the site fidelity is driven by memory, because if it is, what is going to happen with these animals if the area is changing so much, and if they have this memory to these areas, right? So now I'm going to change a little bit of the topic, and this is going to be shorter also. I'm just going to tell what is chapter 3 and what is the goals. I don't have any results to show yet, but this is also, and we are changing a little bit the topics, but it's still related. The title is Carrying the Burden, Unraveling the Role of Parental Care on the Behavior of Giant Anteaters. So we are focusing a lot on parental care. This is important because giant anteaters normally carry their pups up to 6 to 9 months on their backs. And again, I have a huge team here with me. And something that is also important in this movement ecology field, in the movement, a lot of the research that is done, normally we are using external factors, right? It's easier to have information about the landscape, the temperature, and see how these external factors are influencing the behavior and the movement. However, there is this new framework and calls attention that would be also interesting and important to understand how the internal state of the animal is influencing these movements. So let's say if the animal is hungry, or if the animal is pregnant, or how these perceptions will change the movement of this animal as well. And this information is much more difficult to have. Right? It's much more difficult to know if the animal is hungry, or it's much more difficult to know if the animal is pregnant or not in the wild. And this information, parental care, for example, it's a very important, it's a critical moment during the species life because it influences the offspring survival. It has a lot of energetic trade-offs, right? The female, for example, when it's pregnant or when it's carrying the pup, they will probably need to rest more, but they also need to find food. So there is a lot of energetic trade-offs that they need to think about, and it can influence the behavior. And understanding this mechanism, especially in these areas under human influence, change is very important. So here, one of the main questions that we have for this chapter is to understand if when the female has a pup, if the home ranges are shrinking or not, and if these animals are changing the activity patterns, if they are more active or less active when they have the pup. And as we can see here in this photo, this is already a very big pup, but it's still, the female will still carry, and normally they are carrying on their backs, so it's a lot of effort, it seems. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they are changing this behavior in these periods. And just as an example, we will be calculating again the home ranges and then seeing when they have a pup and when they don't have a pup to see how these patterns are changing or not. Just an example, we have 12 females, a lot of data since 2018 until 2023. Different females. It's not that we have all this period for all the females, but sometimes we have a period for one female, another period for the other, but it's a lot of information. And what is very special in this chapter, that normally is very difficult to have observations in the field, in the wild free animals, right? In this chapter, we have, there is this collaborator, is a researcher from Brazil, and she does all of her research observing the females and the pups. So she has tons of hours of observations in the field, and we wanted to combine this information, how the females and pups are behaving in the wild, combining with the movement data, and see if we find some interesting information. And this is very rare in the movement ecology field. So for next steps, we will be calculating the home range, seeing how they are changing. We want to see if the activity patterns also change, if they are more active when they have a pup or not. We wanted to understand if these females have site fidelity during this parental care, meaning that if there is a specific place that is important for these females, if they have a selection of habitats that is more important for them during this period, and also what kind of behavior, like in the field, we can see and combine during this parental care period. And then just to bringing everything back a little bit, these chapters, all of these chapters, we are focusing a lot on the landscape changes for the animals, right? And it's very, we could see in chapter 1 that all the animals are avoiding pasture, right? They're all avoiding pasture. But then when we convert these pastures to soil, oh God, they are using the areas in the pasture. So after the pasture, it seems to be even more complicated for these species. So we hope with this information, we can start bringing attention to the biome, to the species, use it for public policies, for example, to call the attention for the species and what's happening with the agriculture intensification. And just as an example, I wanted to highlight, for example, some very nice projects that ECAS, that is the NGO that we are working with, they have different conservation actions with different partners. This is not part of my research, but it's a research that they started to do since 2017. And they started doing this assessment of the vehicle collision of these animals on the roads. So they started understanding how many animals are dying where. Then they have a huge team with human dimension, public policies, and now they have this, the phase 3 of the ECAS project is the solutions and innovations, where they could have, and as a product from all these phases, They have this guide for mitigating wildlife vehicle collisions, for example. And now they have this official regulation for the state, the Mato Grosso do Sul state, and they started to actually install the underpasses in one of the roads where they did this study. So it's a huge success, and they did with a lot of other partners and researchers as well. And just another example of some of the activities that ICAS has is this environmental education. They have a lot of exhibitions in museums, in schools, so they can talk more about the species, so make people more aware about the species, the importance, the threats. So there are a lot of interesting programs. And actually next week, Dr. Arnaud de Bier, who is the director and founder of the NGO, he will be in a meeting with the Chenartrans specialists for the red list, where they will present part of our results. They are trying to change the status of giant anteaters to see if, at least regionally, they can be considered as endangered. So this is something that we expect as a result from this research. And with that, I would like to thank again and mention that this partnership with ICAS is huge. I would not be here doing my PhD research if it wasn't for them, and that I have a huge team behind everything that I'm talking. And thank you all for being here today. And I'm happy to